Hi, this is Carl Palachuk from Small Biz Thoughts, and this is a success tip for managed service providers. Today, I want to go out on a limb and give you advice that some of you are not going to like at all. And the advice is very simple. Stop putting any attention or activity around Net Promoter Score. NPS, Net Promoter Score, is one of these tools that emerged a while back and everybody fell in love with it. And the theory is that it will help you measure loyalty and customer satisfaction. The reality is it does a very poor job of both of those things. And in particular, it doesn't distinguish between satisfaction and loyalty. It assumes, A, that these are both the same thing, and B, that if people like you, they're going to be loyal to you. It isn't clear that either of those things is true. So let's start with what is the Net Promoter Score. So basically, you ask people, how likely are you to recommend somebody, and you give them a scale from 1 to 10. You ignore 1 through 6, okay, right? So those are called detractors. And the detractors are the people who, if somebody said, hey, how do you like that company? They would say, oh, they're horrible and evil and nasty and the worst thing on earth. I would never do business with them. And then you have 9 and 10 that basically these are your cheerleaders. These are people who love you, and if somebody says, what do you think about this company? You'll say, oh my God, greatest thing in the history of the world. I would never go anywhere else. In a million years, I will never give anybody else a penny except that company. I love them. Now, important safety tip. Do either of those sound like you? Well, just a question. Probably not. And so you have to also remember that people are being asked a question and they're going to answer it, even though the things they say may not necessarily be useful. Now, there's a couple left, 7 and 8, right? These are people who are passive, at least in the Net Promoter Score world, that they're not going to cheer you on and they're not going to run you down. And here's the important safety tip. This is the most common response people actually have in the world. I saw a meme one time where somebody had posted on Facebook that they had done something with Microsoft Windows, and then the question came up, hey, how likely are you to recommend Windows 11 to your friends? And they put 0. And the comment section, they put, you may or may not believe this, but people don't generally go around recommending operating systems to their friends. It's just not a thing people do. And this is very important because the reason that we care at all about Net Promoter Score, if we care at all, is that we're trying to figure out whether or not we're doing a good job with our clients. So if this is a measure of customer service or customer satisfaction, you should ask a very clear question. How satisfied are you? Now, what happens with the Net Promoter Score is you take the people who hate you, or the detractors, and you take the people who love you, or the promoters, and then you add up the scores for each of them, and then you subtract the scores from the other. And so when you get the people who love you minus the people who detract from you, and you divide that out, and then you divide by the number of answers, right? You get this Net Promoter Score. And I'm not going to go into the math, and I'm not going to write a formula here, and I'm not going to make it very clear to you, because here's the problem. The Net Promoter Score is almost identical to taking all the answers and dividing by the number of respondents. In other words, it is the mean. And if it's not the mean, it just means you didn't ask enough people. You have a biased sample. So when you have a good sample, then you have a mean, and the mean is actually going to be nearly identical to the Net Promoter Score. And if you don't believe me, put up a bunch of data, create an Excel spreadsheet, put in 1,000 responses or 100 responses, And my guess is what you're going to find is the mean is within 1/2 or maybe 1 decimal point of the Net Promoter Score. So just use the mean. And as long as we're on the subject, you should also just use a question about satisfaction. And if you want to know about loyalty, you should ask a question about loyalty. But big picture, neither of those things is going to tell you about actual loyalty of your clients. The promoters of the Net Promoter Score tell you that this will give you ideas about growth, and this will give you ideas about loyalty. It'll help you measure how well you're doing with customer service. But there's no questions here about service. There's no detail. There's no actual, like, did you have a good interaction? Did your problem get solved on the first try? Do you generally like the way this company does business? It has nothing that actually digs into what makes people loyal customers. Remember that if you have a long-term relationship with a customer, your level of loyalty is fairly set, and it would take a serious infraction. It would take some big issue to notch down that level of loyalty. So you probably know that if somebody's with you a long time, they're probably fairly loyal. It's unlikely that they're sticking around until you raise your price by 1 more penny and then they'll just leave. No, what's more likely to happen is that if they have a couple of really bad service experiences close together, then they're going to open the door to maybe this is no longer a working relationship. But until that happens, there is only one really great way for you to know how loyal they are. Take them to lunch and ask them. Now, I will say, if you are a major corporation with 1,000 or 10,000 or 100,000 employees, you're probably A, not watching this video, and B, not able to take all of your clients to lunch. If you're a small IT company, if you have 10 or 50 or even 100 different contracts, you can take everybody to lunch. It might take you a year, but you can go out with your clients, you can meet with them, you can have roadmap meetings, you can find out what they're doing, you can find out what they need, you can find out whether or not you are providing what they need. You can ask them about their business, what direction it's going, are they growing or shrinking, do they have specific challenges, right? All of the good, juicy content that helps you actually understand what they do for a living will also demonstrate to them that you care and that you're involved and that you want to continue to be their IT service provider. And that in turn is going to have them open up to you, give you lots of good juicy information that you can use to give them better support. And that means that when you come back a year later and you have another one of these meetings, they're going to be like, hey, this was a really great year. You gave us amazing support. We totally love it. And if you need to ask, are you loyal to me? Well, you can ask that. But having really meaningful conversations with them goes an awful long way. Again, I want you to think about your real life experience. Think about whoever your phone company is. AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile, whoever. Or your cable company. Who do you get your cable internet from? How satisfied are you with them? Now that's a really interesting question because most people are between middle of the road and 0 satisfaction. Almost nobody is a raving lunatic fan of the phone company, of the cable company. They get no 9s and 10s. In what the Net Promoter Score calls passives. They get some passives, but mostly they get detractors. People hate, for the most part, the cable company. They dislike their phone company. But do they change? No, they do not. There is no loyalty in any of this. They stick around because they haven't had an experience so bad that it drives them out the door. When I get rid of a vendor like that, like a phone company, I generally find myself using the phrase that they have worked so hard to lose my business that I wouldn't want to disappoint them, right? I was a customer of Verizon for 17 years, and we just had a falling out because I had a customer service experience that was so bad and cost me so much money that I will never go back to them, no matter what happens, for as long as I live. But I put up with bad service for 17 years before they were so bad that I went out the door. That is what people experience in big business. That's what enterprise level companies experience all the time. And oddly enough, ironically enough, they're the ones who count on Net Promoter Scores. They're the ones for whom there might be some use to a Net Promoter Score, although I would still argue that a measure of customer satisfaction is a better measure of whether or not somebody's going to leave them. Net Promoter Score does not in any way indicate whether or not somebody will actually leave your company. Somebody can be going along with Verizon or AT&T or anybody else for 10, 15, 20 years, and then one day they have a horrible experience so bad that they finally decide to leave. Your company doesn't have to worry about any of that. Assuming that you are anywhere between 1 and, say, 50, 75 employees, none of that is relevant to you. You can understand the loyalty of your clients. You can have a relationship with them. You can build that relationship. You can maintain that relationship. You can have a never-ending conversation with your clients about the future of your relationship. And all of this Net Promoter Score stuff can go out the window. I started by saying that you shouldn't be paying any attention or putting any effort into this. And this is why. Take all the effort that you might put into calculating Net Promoter Scores and sending out these little surveys after every single interaction, throw all that out the window and take all that attention and put it into paying attention to your clients, having one more roadmap meeting, having one more conversation about the future, having one more discussion about whether their company is growing or shrinking or facing new technology challenges, and how you can help them to make more money. So, in general, you should not pay attention to stuff that doesn't matter or that is merely costing you money and detracts from your ability to give excellent customer service. In my opinion, every minute spent on the Net Promoter Score is a minute that you are not spending giving your clients excellent service. Just my thoughts for Small Biz Thoughts. This is Carl Palachuk, wishing you the best of luck in your managed service business.